I don't really think America is as polarized as we think it is. I use the Indiana State House as a really good example.
Hmm.
We're super majority with Republicans, right?
Okay.
But you walk across the hall and you have.
Welcome to the Your Message Received podcast. And now, taking your message to the finish line, your host, John Duffin.
Hey folks, John Duffin here, Duffin Media. Welcome back to another episode of Your Message Received. Your Message Received is the home, the place, the platform to help you find your best, most true, authentic business voice. And maybe we shorten that up and just say, find your most true, authentic voice. Get what you want, find what you need, improve your results. Hey, if we're lucky, maybe we'll help you meet the person of your dreams, make billions of dollars. I'm pretty sure today's guest will handle that because I can't. But the fact is, the rest of it we get to do. And I have a guest today who I work in a platform, and so does my guest, called Podmatch, where I've gotten to meet some really, really, really cool people as a result. And today I get to introduce to you Chloe Anagnos. Chloe, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, John. I'm so excited.
Thank you for that. Hey, look, so folks, Chloe happens to be a writer, digital strategist, a hyper-involved community member. Oh, a mom to Winnie and Will, who we referenced off camera, and the wife who is also a representative in Indiana. Avid writer as well too, writes for a lot of people and covers a lot of ground. Oh, and folks, as I now know, the second person I now know from Elkhart, Indiana, who, as we were talking about accents, I never knew I had a Philadelphia accent until somebody told me, and which I guess is true. Perception is reality. And Chloe, as I said, with what I called her Indiana accent, but who knows? I got to ask you, what was life like growing up in Elkhart, Indiana for you?
Oh, well, I would say I had a great childhood, wonderful family, wonderful parents, immigrant background.
Mm-hmm.
But when 2006, 2007 rolled around, as most elder millennials remember, was the Great Recession, right? And so Elkhart was hit pretty badly just because we are the RV capital of the world. We make a lot of recreational vehicles. If you remember the Robin Williams movie, RV, that RV actually is from Elkhart, Indiana, believe it or not, which is pretty neat. And so when you have a town or a city that's built on a business that relies on people having disposable income, and you go through an economic crisis, what's going to happen? You're going to have a bad time. So unfortunately, Elkhart was hit pretty bad. Kokomo, Indiana, Anderson, Indiana, where I live now, a lot of those GM, Chevrolet type towns didn't do so hot. And so it was really around that time that I was growing up. I was in high school, and I was kind of old enough to understand what was going on, especially when you're constantly in the news. And our president at the time, President Obama, came to Elkhart twice to speak about economic stimulus, his economic stimulus bill of 2009.
Right.
And he actually, on the campaign trail, which is wild, went around door to door introducing himself, which you don't really see national candidates do. So that was a really big deal to be 15, 16 years old and have the entire country and the entire world kind of focusing on your area.
I think that to have that sort of a laser focus, so to speak, in any city, let alone a smaller, and Elkhart, not small town, but smaller-ish, right?
Sure.
It's an amazing thing. So as we will get more into in terms of your entrepreneurial spirit and campaign spirit, I think it's amazing that that had an influence. What did it feel like having literally a president in the neighborhood? What was it? What did it feel like? Obviously, people are talking, but what did it feel like to have the presence of the position there?
It really felt like something special. But at the same time, it also felt like, man, are things so bad that we have to be the center of attention, right? And when you go from being an area where industry is always doing very well to a 22% unemployment rate, it hurts. And I don't have the stats in front of me right this second, but I know, at least from my standpoint, from being in high school, the majority of students were on free or reduced lunch. The majority of my friends had parents who had either been furloughed, laid off, or had to pivot into finding new careers. And so it was really tough. But one of the things that I love about the United States, I love about America, is the resilience. And I think that you see that in the Elkhart, Indiana economy. You had a lot of people who pivoted and started small businesses. You had bigger industries that wanted to move to the area, like Amazon. And I think you see that across the country, especially when, we're only relying on one form of industry. You have to be able to pivot when times aren't so great.
You just brought up something I forgot. So I was not a millennial during that timeline of 06, 07, even 08. But I also remember terribly well, my career has to do with advertising, but especially then was television advertising and sales. And I'm in Detroit. I remember two things. I'm in Detroit right around that time. Now, this was obviously the hotbed of where all the ad agencies were for all the automotive, whether it was recreational vehicle or a vehicle, right? And I remember this tremendous sense of sadness, emptiness, that you would go into these major advertising agencies where they housed hundreds, if not thousands of people employed, right? And we would go, I was doing the tour and there was nobody there. You could throw bowling balls down the midst of where people were. And so the pivot part that you just alluded to is really a great reminder to me, because not everybody does that or thinks that they're capable of it. So that you got to watch that sense of people making strategic shifts. Did you always want to, back then, when you're watching what's going on around you? We talked off camera in regards to the education that you were receiving prior to that point. Walk me through in terms of where you wanted to be in relation to where you were and how you saw yourself. First educationally, then we'll morph into professionally.
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to what folks would probably consider a little bit more of a rougher high school. We had a lot of issues with discipline. We had a lot of issues with folks who were getting kicked out of maybe, some of the rougher, like South Bend schools, and were put wherever schools would take them. We had a really big issue with gang violence at my high school as well, which is, I'm sure you can imagine, being barely, 5 foot, 100 pounds dripping wet as a freshman in high school can be a little bit scary, right? My parents at the time did not have the funds to send me to a private high school because we didn't have school choice in Indiana at that time. And so it was one of those things where they said, hey, you in life are going to have to figure out how to get along with a lot of different people. We believe in the system that you're in right now. That's where my dad had gone to high school. And they said, we're going to make the most of it and you're going to make it work. I was very fortunate to find a lot of mentors in my school system. One of them, his name literally is Mr. Valentine. Hey, Mr. Valentine, how you doing? He's out in Wisconsin right now. But he was our digital media teacher, and he took me under his wing and showed me, hey, this is what a career in TV news would look like. This is what a career in digital media would look like. And he really built up that program at Elkhart Central High School, which doesn't exist anymore. Elkhart Central merged with Elkhart Memorial, and now it's just one Elkhart High School. So when I say I went to Elkhart Central, people are like, where is that? I'm like, well, it's still technically there, but it just combined with another one. But the access that I had to the digital media room, I really think just saved me and gave me a lot of direction. I said, that's what I want to do. I want to be making content. I want to be, making videos. I want to be taking photos. I want to be in the news somehow. I just didn't know at that point what it was, but I had a general interest in it. So I'm very thankful that I was able to find that. And I think that's important for teenagers who they need some direction. they need an adult that's going to show them, hey, this is what's possible after high school. Because especially now, John, after COVID, I don't know that we have that with the extracurriculars and some of the, more skills-based classes that we have. I think a lot of schools are really paring down, especially because of federal budget cuts.
Well, not only that, but I would also think too that there was a sense of community, and I mean the sense that I remember things that were in play prior to COVID, and I'm speaking more professionally. That
Sure.
I remember for myself, like meetings, meetups, those sorts of things. Certainly businesses, but even just abilities to meet up. I'll give an example, and thank God this one is back and stronger than ever. But one organization, so for me, the Philadelphia Ad Club was an organization, a collective business organization, all aspects of advertising, from the digital to the television to the radio, the event coordinated, to the clients, to the agencies. It was an amazing meeting place that almost got lost. Empty rooms all of a sudden, nobody showing up. Then we tried to do virtual and didn't happen. I'm so relieved in a sense that now it's back, it's flourishing. And so I believe in my heart that it's not all businesses or curriculums have disappeared, but it just became a little bit more difficult to find. I love the fact that you got a taste in what you wanted, or exposure, I guess, is the word I want, right? So how did that go? Like, you knew you wanted to do something. How did it begin for you?
I knew that doing the morning announcements in high school was cool. It was actually in like this broadcast studio, I think it was WSBT. That's the CBS affiliate that's in South Bend.
Wow.
That was their set that they had just donated to our high school, which was amazing. And I said, I want to do the announcements. I want to learn how to use the camera. I want to use the teleprompter. I want to write the commercials. I mean, this is so nerdy, John, but like the Digital Media Club, we were the ones who came up with, like, if there was like a book fair or something extra that was going on, we would write the commercials. We'd shoot the commercials, we'd edit them, and then we'd put them with the morning news, which was so fun. Absolutely just so fun.
It had to be. It
was awesome. It was awesome. And we got to use this really cool thing called the internet and Facebook that most people finally had. I'm dating myself here, but 12 years ago, social media started to really take off. And so I got my feet wet with advertising before I really even knew what I was doing, which is just so wild. And so then, by the time high school graduation rolled around, I said, hey, I want to go to the #1 broadcasting digital media school in the state, and that is Ball State University. Sure. That's where David Letterman went. He actually donated his late night set to the university, which is so cool. So
I didn't know that. I didn't realize. That's amazing.
He did, which was just absolutely amazing. And so now students get to work on his old set and film and whatnot.
Funny, because I could see this in my mind. I could see it, and that's great.
Oh yeah. Yeah, super great. And so by the time I got to college, I realized, I really do like film. I love the news. But then I kind of realized, oh man, I wouldn't have a normal schedule if I went into broadcasting. I have a lot of friends that are meteorologists that work in broadcasting, work in TV news. They get up at 2 a.m. to go into the studio.
100% true. Yep.
And I said, I don't know that that's necessarily for me. And so I kind of, again, pivoted in my career and in life. I pivoted to long form journalism and writing specifically. So that's where I've been very fortunate to kind of, create this byline for myself and kind of have my lane of culture, politics, and motherhood. And I've just been so fortunate. But along with that kind of good luck and good fortune has been a lot of hard work and a lot of late nights, as I'm sure you can imagine.
I can only imagine. And I was going to say, one of the things that I find in terms of doing my due diligence, that triangle of choices, give them to me again. You said it. Say it for me again. Of culture, politics, and
motherhood.
There you go. they don't naturally help me understand how they fit in terms of a way that you're able to be fulfilled when each of them feel like a platform on their own.
Absolutely. Well, I wrote an op-ed recently for the Washington Examiner about how during National Small Business Week, which I think was the beginning of May, how allowing flexibility in the workplace is something that moms want, right? And you look at COVID, you look at how many people went into remote work or even hybrid work, really.
Yeah.
And employers having that flexibility directly impacts women, directly impacts motherhood. I myself have been a remote employee since even before COVID. So I like to say that, you know, I've been doing the popular thing a lot longer than other folks, but allowing that flexibility is good for the economy. It's good for the marketplace, and it's good for overall output. But at the same time, John, I also tell people that if you really want something done, give the task to a busy mom who's going to figure out the fastest and most straightforward way to get something done on time and on budget.
There's a acceptance award speech by Reese Witherspoon. Now, she doesn't necessarily pull out the mom part, but she talked about give it to a woman. And in terms of you want something done, give it. And it really is such a powerful way that she says it in a very kind, cool, funny, like her, matter-of-fact way. But it's just right. I gotcha. Like, I couldn't imagine, that I could never compete. I can't, and personally, I don't have kids. I nieces and nephews, but moms or dads right now, I'm just blown away is not the word I want. I'm almost like stunned by the volume of things they have to do, including live their lives. And so
Absolutely.
To me, you then are, you talked about the hybrid part and the pioneer, so to speak. Like, I also was fascinated by the sense of when you throw politics in without turning it into a politics conversation, but it's something where you've got to weave this sort of line in every single communication that you have. You talk about long form journalism, gives you a little bit more of a chance to air out. But how were you able to navigate in the beginning? Did you go where I'm just asking, go where the money was? Did you go to what you truly believed in? Did you go where the opportunity was? How did you make choices in the beginning as to what and who you were going to write about?
Well, big thing for me was, again, we talk about coming from an immigrant background. I was taught from a very early age, you don't depend on anyone but yourself. And so I was very much motivated by the fact that once I graduated from university, that was it. I was on my own. I had to figure it out. So I had to not only go where the money is, go where the money was, but I also had to figure out, okay, what employer is going to, make me feel like, one, I'm contributing to society, right? I'm living out the values that I want to live, but also, how am I making a difference in this world? And I think that one of the wonderful things about my full-time work with America's Future is that we are that third place community that's not home, that's not work, where folks can come together to make sure that their values are lived out, right? And we talk a lot about COVID and how folks had to move virtually to things. And we're very lucky that we've been that third place for people. But a lot of times, I really have just found that if I have an interest in something, I want to write about it, I want to create content about it, it just kind of comes to me, right? Okay. And one of the things that I would hear a lot in high school and in college, and you hear a lot of people who say, okay, well, write what you know. I don't buy that. I don't buy it. I don't write about what I know. I write about what I want to learn more about. And so that kind of goes into that research part of journalism and my background in broadcasting, because it's like, hey, if you want to be able to speak about this confidently, you're going to have to do a little bit more research on it. So it's very interesting in this information age where everybody has, smartphones and can pull up Google as fast as they want, that we have, situations with fake news and this is fake and this isn't real. And so we have to be our own detectives. And I think that curiosity has kind of led me to where I am today.
Stay with me on that, because I loved, and I want to go back to what you just said a couple minutes ago. And I found it fascinating. You said, hey, like coming from if I heard you correctly, coming from an immigrant family, that the life lesson happened to be, we're in it, we're on our own. That you just figure it out on your own. It's an interesting conclusion. And I want to just stay with that for a moment. Now, understanding the fact is your family, meaning great-grandparents and what have you, had a spectacularly difficult life situation in Greece. How did that impact you? How did it impact you, other than the fact that it is such a harrowing thing that I read in regards to what happened to them? Did anything, was like, other than your knowledge of it, was there things there that you took away from it?
So big thing for folks to know is that, so I'm Chloe Anagnos, Greek American, second generation. My great grandparents on my dad's side were political prisoners during the communist-backed Greek Civil War, right before and kind of like right after World War II. My yaya and my late papu, grandfather, both experienced Nazis who invaded their villages during World War II. And my yaya, my grandmother, grew up basically after World War II and then into the communist-backed Civil War without her parents. They were imprisoned for about 5 years. So she was raised, and her sisters were raised by neighbors and other family members while they were in prison. They didn't meet until they both moved over to Canada and then the U.S. respectively. I did not know my great-grandparents. They passed before I was born. And I didn't know that they were political prisoners until I was about 20-something. It was something that my grandparents never really talked about. I always knew that they had experienced the Nazi occupation in Greece during World War II, but my yaya never really talked about it. And I think it kind of goes back to people who experience war, people who experience the Holocaust, especially. It's traumatic and they don't want to talk about it. But I was on a flight with my yaya, and we were going, I think, to visit family on the opposite side of the country. And I said, I'm just so curious. What was it like growing up during World War II? What was it like? What was it like? And I kept peppering her with questions until she finally broke down and just said, this is all the terrible stuff that happened to me. And do you want a cookie? Because I have it in my purse. And just, God bless her, but she just really did not want to talk about it. And I told her, I said, I'm curious because we can't let these atrocities happen again. And your voice is important. And I want to know. Again, journalist, just very curious.
Yeah.
Even though I wasn't in my 20s until I learned that part of my family history, we always were kind of brought up with you do it yourself. You do it yourself. You don't rely on anybody else. You hang your own shingle. We all own small businesses, and we don't take no for an answer. And I think if you've seen the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding, wonderful movie. It explains the Greek American culture very, very well, or really any like sub-ethnic group. You look at Italians, you look at Jews. I mean, you look at anybody and that's them, right? Like that's how their family is. And so that is what really kind of sparked a lot of the, hey, entrepreneurial, I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to figure it out. I'm not going to rely on anybody else. And
I'm not going to take no for an answer.
I'm not going to take no for an answer. And John, I'll tell you this now as a parent.
Yes.
I see so many people who do everything for their kids. I'm talking, they're 6, 7 years old and they're still having their parents tie their shoes for them. Or they're, just like small examples like that. But my husband kind of gets on me, and he is not Greek. I will say that. So he's not Greek. He's an American. I mean, we both are, but I kind of joke with him. I say, well, you're an American, I'm Greek. It's just our running joke. But our kids will, maybe they're trying to like figure something out, or they're trying to open a door, or they're doing something, and they'll struggle, and he'll go over to help them. I'll say, no, let them figure it out. Let them figure it out. They can do But, and so it's just a very interesting kind of mentality. Now that I'm a parent, I kind of notice how I was brought up reflected in my parenting.
I love that. And I love the fact that you're able to take that sort of, hey, let them figure it out. As it regarded back, like in terms of having that background, getting the information, please give me the term again for your grandmother. Say it one more time for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I know that. And I did see the first movie. I didn't see the sequels, but I did see my,
All right.
right. I'm not typically a sequel guy, and you just
Sure.
confirmed why. But meanwhile, that it's like, so you have this information and you're starting out, and things are not exactly the easiest when you're a millennial and from a tough school. When you made choices in regards to how to write, how has your writing style evolved over the years with what you know in terms of the information seeking, as you said earlier, as opposed to just preaching opinions that some do? Like, how has the style evolved? Who do you speak with? Like, walk me through in terms of threading that needle.
Well, one of the things that they'll teach you in journalism school is that you have to write for a fourth grade audience, which
Okay.
is kind of wild to think about, that the average
Mhm.
American only has the reading comprehension skills of like a fourth grader, but
Mhm.
that's a conversation for another day,
Well,
right?
yeah.
Which makes sense because again, you're writing to a diverse audience and you're
Mhm.
writing to a lot of different folks. So one of the things that I've had to really work on myself is, and I don't want to say dumbing down what my argument is,
Mhm.
but just making it more concise and easier to explain in a 30 or 20-second soundbite.
Yeah.
I always tell my clients, people that I work with in the communications field, if you're explaining, you're losing.
Mhm.
Your stance should be so clear that you can sum it up in a sentence or a tweet. If we're still calling them tweets now that
Right.
it's
I don't know how you X whatever, so I don't.
X, whatever, it doesn't
We'll go with tweet is fine. Right.
right. But I think that so many people, especially when I work with a lot of politicians, my husband is one,
Mhm.
they tend to be very wonky. They tend to be very analytical. That's great if you're in a courtroom or if you're disputing contracts. But when you're trying to get your point across to the masses, you have to be as concise and clear as you possibly can. And so I would say that I've gotten a lot more clear, a lot more concise as the years have gone on.
Mm.
But one of the things that I have to work up against is our friend ChatGPT and AI.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
sure in your field, that's something that you were like, oh my gosh, I never thought that the robots would be taking over, right? But just when I think maybe a tweet or a sentence isn't, short enough, I run some of my scripts through ChatGPT and it
Mhm.
spits me out something even better, which is
Mhm.
wild. But I would hate to be a recent college graduate looking for a comms job right now. I really would.
Let me ask you on that topic. Like, so it's the usage of it to me just works. I use it now all the time and I feel, but there's always that sense for myself personally where someone who creates, and I came from the sales management side, but I lean heavily into the creative side now, that the sense that I don't know the word plagiarism, I guess. It's like, well, wait a minute, wait a minute. And for you, they went in a very old school fashion in regards to the ways that you were educated and what you were exposed to. The technology was current, but that sense of getting and learning more and doing the research and all that sort of thing, right? And I'm sorry, I'll say it better. How did you navigate and come to the decision, hey, I want this better? Uh, how did you get it to work for you?
I think it's really tough because you're
Mhm.
taught don't plagiarize, don't plagiarize. Like if you
Mhm.
plagiarize, you're going to get thrown
You'll
out,
get an
right? Like
F.
oh, you'll get an F. Well, my university would take it a step further, and if you were in the comm school and you were caught plagiarizing, you'd get kicked out. I mean, it was tough, which
Mhm.
which I appreciate. But now it's like, my gosh, professionals are using Chat GPT to either save time,
Mhm.
save money. I mean, the economy is not great right now, so that makes sense. But I kind of just tell myself with any piece of technology that's new, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
hey, I got to get on the bandwagon.
Mhm.
I got to get on the bandwagon, figure it out, do it
Mhm.
myself.
Mhm.
Because one, no one's coming to save me, right? Like no one's coming to motivate me. No one's coming to make me
Mhm.
be better. I have to do that myself. And I kind of said the same thing about TikTok. I was constantly like, I don't want to get on it. I don't want to get on it. I don't want to learn anything about it. It's going to go away. Well, that was almost 6 years ago, and here we are.
Yeah.
Still have to figure it out. And so that's kind of the thing that I would tell anyone. It's like, hey, maybe, do your best to make sure that it sounds like you so that it's not obvious that something's written with AI or that something's created with AI. But ultimately, if it's going to make you faster, leaner, and a little bit better in your craft, then go for it.
Go for it. And if it's no, everyone's using it and it's not an excuse, it's just the reality. And there's simply no reason to avoid it. I want to ask you too, in regards to just say, hey, folks, if you happen to be watching this, listening to this in the year 2025, when we're talking in real time, I would always be curious as well, where it is you talked about the ability for you to be able to write as a third, like it's this comfortable sense of forgive me, give me the term again, the third with
Third
American.
place.
Thank you. So
Yeah.
there's very little to me sense of comfort or that in terms of the polarization of opinions and getting away from which opinion today is correct or not or whatever. How are you able to weave through so that you get your curiosity satisfied, which you talked about in the beginning is pivotal in terms of what you want to do, but not get into a polarized situation where you're literally out by yourself as opposed to solving something on your own. You're virtually just there on your own. How do you do it and keep your individuality?
One of the things I remind myself is that it's easy to attract flies with honey.
Mm-hmm.
You get more flies when you use honey, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that I had to be very careful about is saying, hey, these are the facts. This is what I know.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of what works for me and my family, what works for Hoosiers here in the state of Indiana, we're not Indians, as many would like to say. We are Hoosiers, right? That these policies are what makes sense. This is what people are asking for. Surveys are a really good thing to rely on. That op-ed that I mentioned talking about how I think it's something like 90% of women agree that flexibility in the workplace is good.
Right.
That's something, and those are like hard, concrete facts that you can use to get your point across. But I also have to remind myself too that I don't really think America is as polarized as we think it is. I use the Indiana State House as a really good example. We're super majority with Republicans, right?
Okay.
But you walk across the hall and you have friends that are Democrats, you have folks that are libertarian. Everyone realizes that they have to get together and they have to get along, right? And I think that the mainstream media is something that can be very polarizing, but I think the majority of Americans agree that we have to get along no matter what. And the majority of Americans don't really want to pick a side anymore. I don't remember if it was Politico or maybe USA Today that had something that came out recently that the number of independents is skyrocketing right now. So it's a very kind of like hard line to draw, but I think as long as you're being respectful and saying, hey, I know that this side believes this side believes this is for me in my house, this is what we would do. I think that'll get you a long way, especially if you're being honest.
I'm looking at one of the things when you with America's Future, and I'm looking at what you stand for, the values, the intellectual humility. I find a very interesting. That would certainly sound as if where you're coming from fits that completely, and it talks about we practice intellectual humility and honesty. We think viewpoints are for debate, not derision, and we welcome any peaceful person into our conversation and public debate about how to unite people and move the communities forward. So you're saying, and that would be quite comforting to think that people are not as polarized as we think. What is interesting to you right now in regards to the things that you want to learn more? As you said, hey, I want to learn more. So what are some of the things right now that matter to you as a mom, as a political person, as a writer? What are, as a culture specialist, what are some of the things that really are interesting you right now? Interesting
One of the
to
big
you. I'm
things,
so sorry I kept leaving out the big right.
you're okay. All good. Well, one of the things that I find super interesting right now is school choice and the
Okay.
ideas behind school choice, the school choice movement, educational freedom.
Mhm.
And one of the things that we just had passed in Indiana is universal school choice. So no matter your income level, you can do what's called a public to public school transfer. Basically, your tax dollars follow your student wherever it is they want to go. I'm not exactly sure what the situation is with educational freedom in Pennsylvania,
Right.
but I think you guys are kind of close to us.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting that we've had, public schools have been around since the early 1900s. And the idea of educational freedom has only been around for maybe about a decade.
Mhm.
And so when you're trying to change hearts and minds, you're going from, well, this is how it's always been for 100 years.
Mhm.
And, stay on the bandwagon. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Mhm.
But then you have parents that are coming out that are saying, hey, my kid doesn't thrive in this type of scenario,
Right.
in this situation.
Yep.
I want to find something different for them. And so I find it very interesting as a digital strategist, a marketer, a parent, someone who, works with politicians and different policymakers to change hearts and minds, that we've had a really big national and now statewide and even local discussion about educational freedom and school choice.
Right.
Just from a 30,000 foot view, it's very interesting to see the different voices that have come out either in opposition or either in support. And so you get a lot of very passionate people very quickly. And it's just really interesting to watch.
I've had a couple of podcast guests that are exceedingly passionate about homeschooling. Does that factor into this conversation in regard with Indiana or anywhere?
It does, yes. And so I think, and don't quote me on this, maybe have my husband on the podcast at some point, because he can tell you better. But I think if you are a homeschooling parent, that tax money stays with you. So you can use that on curriculum. You can put it in an educational choice, savings account, ESA, whatever they're called. And I think COVID is what really stemmed a lot of my interest and a lot of this interesting, national conversation. Parents were, in Zoom school with kids and realizing like, man, I can teach my kid this. Like,
Right.
I might not have an education degree, but, I can teach them how to count. I can teach them to do this. And so people are getting really entrepreneurial and they're banding together and saying, hey, we're either going to create co-ops or, hey, what works in Southern Indiana might not work for kids in Northern Indiana. It's the same thing in Pennsylvania. What's the market want right now? Do we want kids that are going to trade school or do we want kids that are going to a four-year institution? It really depends on the state. And I always say, too, what works in Indiana won't work in Pennsylvania, won't work in California, because each set of students in each community is different. So do what's best for your community.
So I'd ask you to said something, and I'm not pushing back, but I just heard it and I was curious. When you talk about, hey, what works in Indiana wouldn't work in Pennsylvania, and then you say each community is different. How are states able to navigate as one entity when you've got literally Northern Indiana, Southern Indiana, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Amish country in the middle?
For sure.
Like, so how I don't necessarily personally buy into the fact that, leave it to the state, because there's so many different dynamics with the state. I just find that that's something that concerns me, that it's like, let the states figure it out, simply because there's so many different voices within the states. How do you reconcile that in regard? I don't mean fix it. What I simply mean is your understanding in regards to how that would, in essence, work.
Sure. And I think that's really interesting because, Indiana is about 7 million people, but folks don't realize that northern Indiana versus central Indiana, the metropolitan area, versus southern Indiana, which, I mean, you want to talk about accents. Those folks have southern accents all the way down. And it's not Louisville. They call it Louisville.
Oh, like Kentucky, like Louisville.
Like Kentucky. They're practically from Kentucky. We just kind of ignore them. No, I'm totally kidding. But we kind of saw that this past legislative session where property taxes was the big to do.
Right.
And so you have a lot of folks in these local communities that would say, hey, Indianapolis is completely different from South Bend. Our needs are totally different. And so you see a lot of that back and forth at the State House. And so it kind of goes back to hey, I almost think it goes back to local communities, and we really shouldn't have this much state control because, again, what's going to work for people in Evansville versus Indianapolis versus, practically the Chicagoland area is all going to be very different. So that's one of the things that I've also been pretty passionate about is bringing back some of that state control. And my husband is as well. Of course, I don't speak for him as an elected official, but his big thing when he went down to the State House this past session was, hey, we got to rein it back and give communities more local control of what they can and cannot do.
Yeah. I that's the part where, to me, I admire people that fight that fight. Like, so for myself, I'm of the age where, in essence, choice in terms of where you went to school was non-existent. You live in a certain area, you went here. And if you my choice growing up was Catholic school or public school.
Yep.
But it wasn't that. It was St. Dominic's or Brown School, which was the public school. And that was it. That was it. You could maybe pick a private school for high school. And so I would be of the type where I found homeschooling to be absurd in the sense that it was like, I had a really hard time with the sense that I thought it was code for something. I really did. I just thought it was code for, we're not going to let them learn this, so we're just going to teach them here at home. It's one of these things why I think conversations have to continue. As much for me, it is in the sense that I was like, no, please don't talk about homeschool. But you find when you speak to those individuals, that is like they say some things that I find fascinating. And I say that in a complimentary way. And I think that's why these conversations have to proceed. Because when you just said earlier in regards to the Indiana, like the State House and, hey, across the hall, you know what I mean, and all that stuff, I'm becoming in what I feel like is a really rough time right now to have bipartisan and collective and all that sort of thing. It's tougher to have the conversations. It's just, to me, tougher. So personally. And so
I have a story for you about homeschooling that is actually pretty darn funny. So homeschooling is very popular in East Central Indiana. Right. And my neighbor across the street, her sons are about my age, if not a little bit older. They've got 4 boys. Homeschooled all of them. They were all basically ready for college by the time they were 16. I think it was her youngest, or maybe her second youngest, I don't remember, but they show up to his university graduation. So he went somewhere in Illinois. And they're sitting towards the back because typical, teenage boy, he didn't get them tickets until kind of like the last minute. And so they're sitting towards the back of like the overall graduation ceremony. And then they start talking about the valedictorian and they start reading his bio. And Don and Diane are sitting there and they're like, oh my gosh, he's college valedictorian. He didn't even tell them. And he said, Mom and Dad, he said, and of course they were furious, because they would have gotten like closer seats.
So funny that I can picture where you're going, right? In terms of like the typical 16-year-old boy.
Just like, I didn't even think about it. But I remember her telling me, he said something along the lines of, you guys always made my education a priority, and we were out and we were going to museums and we were in the children's choir and we did this and we were constantly going all over the place. I didn't have to think about my grades because I just loved learning. And I just thought that was just so sweet. But also, if it was my kid, I don't believe in spanking, but I would have smacked him and said, "You forgot to tell me that you were college valedictorian."
Valedictorian, right?
What's wrong with you? Isn't that insane?
That's so cool. I love that. So I'd ask you, in terms of as you get the chance to continue to trudge down the road, as a mom, as a wife, as someone who is leading the charge in regards to like digital marketing, writing, and what have you, what suggestions? Hey, speaking of valedictorian, that when you're teaching others, whether it's your website, through your content, whatever the case may be, what are some steps that you would suggest for somebody who wants to be, I don't know, a little bit more free, more inclusive, more in a sense of being able to have tougher conversations in the sense of have them in a way, but be able to have them?
Or I think the big thing comes down to respect. And when you talk about writing maybe for nonprofits like America's Future, we're a 501c3. So we are, tax exempt. And one of the things that I tell our writers, our bloggers, the people that create content for us, is that you can attack the idea. You cannot attack the person.
Okay.
When you start to bring other people down or talk about their looks, that's when you've just completely lost, right? And you just don't have a good enough argument. So work on your argument, make your argument as great as you can, but remember it comes down to respect and being civil. Another thing too that I want people to be a little bit more of is just be more fearless. And I know I need to take some more of my own advice, right? Like you always give really good advice, but you can't take it. I got to a point in my life where I was scared to make content. I was afraid to put myself out there. And I think that now with social media being so important for digital strategists, for writers, for marketers, you have to just put yourself out there and not be afraid of the consequences or be afraid of any fallback or, people who push back against you, right? So don't, as cliche as it sounds, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to take opportunities. And that's how you eventually will grow and, be able to kind of live the life that I've been able to live just by being, as fearless as I possibly can be, but also saying yes to whatever I can. Tina Fey has a really good quote in her memoir called Bossy Pants. If you've not read it, it's a little bit older, but it's a wonderful book. It's so funny. Yep. She's so wonderful, but a line that I always take from her book is just say yes and you'll figure it out afterwards. And you just have to. You have to. What would have happened if I said no to a lot of opportunities? I probably wouldn't be where I'm at now.
Let me walk one half step back to what you just said. You covered a lot of ground, but there was one thing that really resonated to me when you said, hey, I hit a point where I was having difficulty in regards to and it was in the fearlessness. It's easy to give the advice. How did you fix it for you?
I think I had to get really comfortable with who I am as a person, and I had to get over that imposter syndrome. I know in therapy talk and with a lot of millennials and Gen Z, imposter syndrome is talked about all the time. But I had to really take a step back and think, hey, I know what I'm talking about. I've been doing this a long time. I've been in my career for about 12 years now. I know who I am. I know what my value is. I know I can do this. And you kind of have to get not in a self-centered, puffed up way about you. You don't want to be there, right? But I think you have to give yourself credit where it's due. And when I started to do that and I started to get a little bit more confident in myself, that's when things really started to take off. And I said, nope, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pitch this op-ed and this, and this. And things kind of broke through for me that way. So again, I think imposter syndrome in an age where everyone is so used to comparison, it can be tough. But again, that's the beast of social media and that's the beast of this industry.
And you take your own advice and say, hey, you can just figure it out on your own. You figured it out and you did, and you do. Chloe, what is the best way to have people find you? to learn more, whether it's America's Future and I'll put that website up to just make it easy so you don't have to start with www. So, like I would. So, in the sense that it's like, what's the best way?
Yeah, best way. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn at Chloe Anagnos. I'm literally the only one in the world. It's a very uncommon last name, even in Greece, which is great. Chloe Anagnos at gmail.com. I'm Chloe at americasfuture.org. Would love to get folks more involved in what I do professionally. Would love to speak at other events as folks see fit. But just love being a resource for people like me and for the American dream.
I love hearing that. Chloe Anagnos, it has been an absolute pleasure so far. Thank you so much for showing up and giving so much value in terms of my audience, and I'm very grateful. Absolutely a pleasure. Thanks for showing up for me.
Thank you, John.
100%. Folks, you've heard another episode of Your Message Received. Keep watching, liking, listening, sharing, and we will keep driving content through your front door or back or whatever. The fact is, just keep showing up and we'll be ready. John Duffin here, Duffin Media. Thanks so much again. Have a great rest of the day. We will talk soon. Bye.
And now, making its way across the finish line, Your Message Received has been a production of Duffin Media.